It's a stumble, a slip, a wobble, a hobble. Does it leave automatic promotion? Improbable. Welcome to the Blue Monday podcast. I'm feeling a bit dejected, Craig. Saturday did not go to plan, did it? Give me your quick feelings before we get into the nitty gritty of Cambridge 1, Ipswich 1, whilst other results maybe slightly went against us. Everybody say hello in the comments if you're watching live on YouTube. Craig.
Yes, equally dejected, I'm afraid. I was on training all week. Yeah, I had like 9 to 5 training, Monday to Friday. I had an exam on Wednesday. I had a 2.5-hour exam Friday afternoon, last thing. And I was like, just looking at the horizon at Cambridge, thinking, oh, at least I've got something to look forward to at the end of the week. But yeah, we just gained a point on Plymouth. So yeah, that was all good.
Joe, how's your general mood? Look, there's Nat, the Sheffield Wednesday fans come to gloat.
Probably not as good as Nat at the moment.
yeah,
it was frustrating, wasn't it? It's sort of been since that Charlton game, isn't it? It's sort of the games have followed a similar pattern, and we haven't got the points we should have got over the last few months. But I think Saturday was a game where, for once, it was the performance as well as the result, which was sort of, we got what we deserved really in the end. If that sort of thing. We first half we didn't show up. Second half we were better, but didn't really do enough after we got the goal. There were sort of moments like we saw Walton's penalty save, and you thought, oh, is that going to be the catalyst to change things? And then we nearly conceded from the resulting corner, and then we score the goal, and Edwards is getting out there, and you think, oh, and then all of a sudden, once we score the goal, they sort of get the ball run back to halfway line, but it doesn't really fire us into life anymore, does it? I don't know. It's been quite frustrating.
Let's get straight into it. So obviously we set this up for a while, Craig, in a kind of optimistic tone, really, because the Morecambe game was blowing the cobwebs away. The Burnley game, we tried to play down as a kind of sort of pre-season friendly in the middle of the season type situation. We had the top two going at each other. And I think I remember, I forget who I was on the pod with, even might have been you, Craig. It was a case of doesn't matter what anybody else does if you don't go and win your own games, and that's the situation that we wanted to be in, making the chase. And so this is, I guess, the reason the optimism has waned a little bit.
Yeah. We, as you said in your intro, Ben, we've stumbled, haven't we? Unfortunately, we haven't completely fallen off the horse, having driven past Newmarket on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, it's a stumble, and we need to very much get back on it because, as you say, everybody around us has got a sudden injection. Well, not a sudden injection, no, weeks and weeks of injection behind them, and they are hot on our heels.
Right, let's get into this. Keep your comments coming, guys. We'll put as many of them up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube as we can. When we get to the questions section, if you got any questions, hold fire for then. So off we go to Mark Bonner and Cambridge, who have been the worst team in the division from, I think, September the 13th or something. Nobody's scored fewer points, worse points per game, etc., etc. Although, obviously, we just had a bit of an influx there in terms of the transfer window, and there is an argument that 5 players into a team that's not winning can do more than 3 players into a team further up the table. You can argue that whichever way you like. Joe, the team, and we'll get your thoughts on this. Walton in goal, Clark, Keogh, Edmondson, Davison, Burns, Evans, Morsey, Broadhead, Chaplin, Ladapo. Your thoughts? And I guess you're going to be looking at the centre-back positions.
Well, yeah, it felt as though we'd obviously beaten Morecambe, and we'd beaten Morecambe well in the last game, and it struck me as, we're just going to keep the same team because we played well against a side that like Morecambe, I know they've got a really good record of late in winning the games against teams at the bottom of the league, but when they've played teams against the top of the league, they just fall to pieces, and they didn't really give us a game at Portman Road. They almost just chucked that one in to save themselves for a more winnable game that came up at the weekend, and they picked up the 3 points from that one. So it felt as though, like I say, the team news broke earlier in the day, and I just thought, it's just not right. I just don't think Keogh's quite at it with regards to a game where we need to push on, have more of the ball, sit higher up the pitch, try and win the ball back, and against a team that's going to try and frustrate us away from home. And I don't know. I think we all expected probably early in the week to be the return of sort of Luke Wolfen and George Edmondson as a pairing at the back, and it wasn't that. And I personally, I think that's a mistake.
Craig, can I counter what Joe said by, I think this would sound a little bit snotty. I don't really mind who the centre-backs are. We should have enough to go to the team with the worst record in the division since mid-September and do something. I'm playing devil's advocate to what Joe said, but what's your take?
Yeah, there is an element of that. But as Joe said, there's an element of needing that ball-playing centre back, or at least a centre back who can bring out a defence and just give you more players further up the pitch. Are we just being too clever for our own good? There's a little devil on my shoulder who's saying, do we have too many choices, too much analysis, clouding of judgment? Who's tailoring their centre halves to play Cambridge? Why are we not just playing our best 11, or the majority of our best 11, and just trusting them to get a job done? Are we just overcomplicating things unnecessarily? I don't know.
That's come up a fair bit, Joe, that as an argument, hasn't it? That Sheffield Wednesday are very solid and don't concede any goals. Rotherham run forward. Sorry, not Rotherham. So got Paul Ward stuck in my. Derby play forward, run forward, simplistic, winning sort of football. Where do you stand on this? I've made the same argument Craig's just made, to be fair, and this overcomplicating argument.
Yeah, well, I don't think throughout the rest of the team we overcomplicate it too much. We sort of generally just tend to tweak the forward players more. That's what it always used to be, wasn't it? We just tweak the forward players and rest them around. Sometimes some games they'd get the first hour, next game they might get the last half hour, and you sort of work it that way. But it seems just like defensively, I'd say we had that Charlton game where obviously what happened there when you had Wolfen and Edmondson as a back two, sorry, as a centre-back pairing. We haven't seen them as a centre-back pairing since. There's sort of been Wolfen and a Burgess, which hasn't really been working clean sheet-wise. Well, nothing's really been working clean sheet-wise since that point. And it's just a little bit of a, I don't know, best teams don't change their centre-backs very often. And I can understand when you're playing a team, like we say, with no disrespect to someone like Morecambe, when you're at home to Morecambe and you want to get a game in the legs of Keogh or Burgess or Edmondson just to keep them going throughout the rest of the season. But I don't know, you don't need to be making that many changes. And through the spine of the team, we don't really make that many changes. It's just we've just started to at that centre back position, and it's maybe having 4 senior guys there has given him one too many options.
Let's have a look at the Cambridge team. So Mitov had returned a couple of games ago. He, like a lot of the Cambridge team, had a very good season last time out. They have added some experience there. You can see Bennett and Morrison sort of returning to Cambridge. I think that was where he started before. What I considered a perfectly serviceable Championship centre-back. Jones, Bennett, Profi. McGrandles is a new one in. Digby, you can still find him. Nibs, who we're going to hear more from in a minute, who was linked with our good friends Plymouth not so long ago before the transfer window opened. Smith and Ironside up top. Your thoughts, Craig?
Yeah, just not anything to be particularly concerned about, I don't think. Obviously, they had a few experienced new recruits drop in January, but again, we shouldn't be going to Cambridge and concerning ourselves. Again, no disrespect, etc., but we shouldn't be, should we? We should be going there, looking to impose ourselves and looking to win the game, get back down the A14, 3 points in your pocket. I don't know, Ironside. He's a perfectly serviceable League One striker.
He always plays well against us, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he did again yesterday, didn't
Yeah.
he, Joe? He was.
I thought it was really impressive again.
Won a lot of headers. He was very mobile, which may have just shown up being up against KO potentially. But yeah, I mean, McGrandles does what McGrandles does. It just happened to be that they all seem to click, get better after January settling in against ourselves. Because they were all right. When the first half, they were snapping into every single tackle. Didn't give us a moment's peace when we did manage to venture into their half. I thought their two wing backs were a little bit ropey. To be fair, I think both Burns and when Edwards come on had their wing backs on toast a little bit, didn't they?
So Kieran McKenna, Joe, has come out and particularly panned the first half. What was your take on, assuming that you agree with him, what was your take on why it was so bad, and take us up to that opening goal, maybe?
Well, we were just sluggish really from the start. There was no zip. I was watching in the stadium, so it's not like I could see anything that was maybe more obvious from a different angle. There didn't seem anything obvious as to why we were just that bit slow. The pitch didn't look bad. It wasn't bobbly or anything like that. But we just seemed to, every time, especially sort of in the midfield, Evans especially, and Morsey as well, they just, rather than play that first time ball, it was always just take the extra touch, take the extra second, and then when they did pass it to the sort of likes of Davis or Clark or Burns, it always seemed to be that sort of yard behind them rather than yard in front of them, and that just sort of went from there. But there were also a few times where we got into sort of half decent positions in the box, and we ended up working the ball around so much that we ended up with the ball back in the halfway line without Cambridge having really done anything, from when somebody could have just been opening their body up and having a shot there, and it just seemed like we tried to overplay it at times. And then in the midfield, as happened for the goal and for the penalty there, sort of Lee Evans maybe not really strong enough in there. Just Paul Digby just sort of powered through him, and I don't know. He's just when the ball gets around him, he sometimes lacks that mobility in there. And I thought that was really obvious for in what was quite a mobile midfield three that Cambridge had on there, that were sort of really sharp in there. That we didn't really get into the pace of the game from that side of it, other than all the sort of all the ball we had.
What's your take, Craig? And if you want to deal with what was frankly an excellent opening goal by Nibs.
Yeah, well, as Jay said, we were just really pedestrian, really passive. And if people who are watching and listening will know that when we're at our worst, that's what it was like. It was just so slow. Everyone was just taking extra touches. Morsey was playing really, really deep yesterday. He's playing first half. He's playing on the toes of the centre halves. When Davis does venture down the left, he often drops into the left back just to cover that. But he just seemed to be doing that even when Davis wasn't really bombing forward. We just seemed to have no real impetus or urgency to our game. And McKenna said afterwards he didn't know where that come from. He wanted us to start aggressively, getting Cambridge's face, but there was none of that. As you say, Joe, that the goal sort of just came out nothing. It was a throw in on the right. It ended up at Paul Digby's feet, and he just brushed past Morsey and then eased his way past Evans without too much of a threat from him. The ball fell to Nibs, who then had a back-tracking Keogh in front of him, and Keogh seemed to sort of lose his bearings and not cover the goal that Nibs was about to shoot at, and he sort of cut across it with his right foot. And yet again, we find ourselves on the back of a shot from distance, which nestles itself very nicely into the far corner. As we were saying before the show started, you say he started it just outside that far post, and it just fades back into that bottom corner. We're finding out how good League One players are at shooting from distance, but we're not particularly finding out how good our players are shooting from distance. Because as Joe says, we have perfect opportunity to do it, but no one just seems to have the confidence to do it, or are they just told simply, the likelihood of you scoring is so low, let's work it into a better position to get ourselves a better chance of scoring. But, you watch the League One highlights, people are shooting from distance and scoring, people are fumbling, goalkeepers are fumbling the shots and you're getting tap-ins. But I say it just doesn't seem to be the way we do stuff. Andy Warren made a good point, actually. I watched him and Stu's post-match video, and the way he phrased it was good. The goal was against the run of possession, not necessarily against the run of play. And I thought that was a very good way of putting it. We had all the possession, but we weren't on top in the game at that point. And it then actually sparked Cambridge into more of an attacking threat. And for the next 10 minutes or so, we were holding on.
Joe?
Yeah, no, agreed. Like I said, with the shot, I was right in line with that. And as soon as it left his boot, you could see where that was ending up, and it just sort of flies across the surface and just cuts back in and probably ends up sort of that far inside the post. And no saving that. And a few minutes later, it's another nothing ball up there, which Ironside just sort of managed to sort of bundle his way past Evans again in the midfield there, and the ball drops to sort of McGrandles, who runs onto it and just squares up Edmondson and drops a shoulder inside, and Edmondson just dangles a leg out there, which I think he could have avoided if he wanted to, but he obviously didn't want to or need to, and it's a penalty, but it's another very, very avoidable piece of defending where
Joe,
it's just them wanting it more in midfield, really, wasn't it there?
What is the issue with, and so there's the Hanlon goal against Wickham. What was the other? There was another dribbly goal.
Oxford goal, wasn't it?
Yes, the Wiltshire goal.
Yeah.
And this penalty. What is the issue here with players dribbling the ball into our box?
Well, I think sometimes the midfield sort of push up a bit high, and then once you get the other side of the midfield, there isn't really someone screening, is there? Because Sam Morsey, it tends to sort of, I know he was a bit deep yesterday, but when we don't have the ball, he tends to sort of push up a little bit more. And Lee Evans or Cameron Humphreys previously had been a sort of deeper lying of the midfielders, and they're sort of maybe just not getting themselves in the best positions and don't have the mobility or pace or strength to just take a cynical foul, just chop them down when they get past them there. Like I say, I watched Man City v Tottenham today. The amount of times, as soon as Man City lose the ball, they just foul. They just foul someone every time because they don't want to give the ball away in transition because it's dangerous. But we don't seem to do that. We give away enough fouls during the rest of the game when there's just nothing needing to doing. We put a silly little late challenge in, which is going nowhere. But when you actually need to just drag someone down, we don't do it, and that's what all the top teams do. They just foul, and we don't.
Evans was doing that at the beginning of the season, to be fair. Before his injury, he was mopping everything up. I don't think he just had that little bit extra agility, pace, whatever you want to call it. But I think in the first 3 or 4 months of the season, where it was until he got injured, I thought he was fantastic at that mopping up, that little tug back, that screening, But whether he's just lost that since the injury, I don't know. But Joe's exactly right about those fouls. When we were chasing the game, the last 10 minutes, including injury time, trying to win the game, the amount of naive fouls we gave away was just ridiculous. And the ref's going to give him, and Cambridge is certainly going to go down for him. But why are you doing it then? It was frustrating.
And let's just focus in on that penalty, Craig. So 7 minutes I've just checked between the goal and the penalty, and I think it was Joe said catalyst, turning point, use whatever word you're comfortable with. How would things have played out differently if that penalty had been scored?
Gee whiz. There were some boos at half-time anyway, but good Lord, there'd have been seats being thrown on the pitch, I think, if it had gone in. We just did not turn up for that first half. I don't know why. And even as Joe said at the very beginning, even that penalty save didn't really give us a kick up the backside either, to give us any sort of momentum, because Cambridge was basically on top for that last period of the first half. Morsey tried to get the team going, but it just didn't happen for whatever reason.
It's even like the roles were reversed, wasn't it, between Morsey and Evans, where when normally you get Lee Evans landing on the ball in that corner of the box to whip across in, that seemed to be Sam Morsey landing on that position. And Evans has got a fantastic delivery on him, but Morsey sort of just tried to clip it in there. And it just seemed, I don't know, it seemed just very, very confused in that middle there to me yesterday.
Yeah.
Half-time, Joe. Triple substitution? It wasn't triple, wasn't a double, was it?
Yep. Davis,
triple, yeah.
Clark and Evans. But Evans was nearly going off before half-time. So Evans had a knock, and Marcus Harness was stripped ready to come on for him before half-time. So it was going to be a positive change at that point, because you had Cameron Humphreys on the bench, but no, Harness was stripped coming on for Evans before the half-time breaks. That was going to happen. And then, so the half-time comes and Evans is replaced by Harness, Janoy Dinashian on for Harry Clark, and Kyle Edwards on for Leif Davis.
And Joe, are we into kind of shake it up baby territory rather than we're going to change anything tactically? Let's put a dribbly player on and a good finisher and execute plan A better, right?
No, it did change the shape, didn't it? Because it meant it ended up with Morsey basically just screening the defence on his own. Edwards was playing very, very high on the left. It was sort of almost like a left winger rather than a left wing back. He was getting back, sort of making a token effort to get back when he needed to. Broadhead had sort of drifted very far inside and was almost playing as a second striker rather than a 10. And then sort of Chaplin and Harness were just nominally sort of central midfielders, but without really dropping back into it. So it was hard to sort of work out exactly what the formation was, but it was. I'd have put it down as sort of like a 3-1-4-2 or something like that.
Yeah, we weren't playing anybody defensively on the left, were we, at all? There was just a big gap there, and hoping that Edmondson can get across to cover it, really. But I thought Janassian and Burns pretty much clicked straight away, didn't they? They certainly for the first quarter of an hour, 20 minutes of that.
Well, that's been a good partnership before, Craig, hasn't it?
Yeah. But then Clark didn't really do anything particularly poor, I didn't think, in the first half, to be honest. What he did provide was a long throw out of nowhere and a proper Rory Delap flat long throw out of nowhere. His time at Stoke obviously rubbed off on him, and it honestly came out of nowhere, didn't it, Joe? And he really, really slung it in at pace as well. That was the highlight of the first half.
First took a long throw, and everyone went, "Huh? Where did that come from?"
So yeah, no, it was good. Yeah. That was the highlight of the first half, I think, Joe, wasn't it? The one, well, he had two. One was a bit floaty, but the first one he absolutely slung in like an exocet.
How did the changes affect going into that second half leading up to the equaliser then, Craig?
Well, we came out of half time really, really looking sharp, didn't we? I thought for the first 10 minutes, Kyle Edwards, like Danashian, got down to the byline a couple of times. Him and Burns playing each other, and then some pullbacks. Edwards got on the ball and just went after Bennett, and Bennett just could not touch him. And but no, so it looked really sharp for that first 10 minutes of the second half.
And to the equalising goal, Craig?
Yeah, well, I think, but Morsey had the ball in the centre, and he tried it a few times just to sort of clip a ball out wide to Edwards. And as Joe says, Edwards had Bennett every single time, but it's strange we didn't really get the ball out to him more than we did. And he, with a bit of skill, nice bit of skill, tricks his way past and keeps going. And he's strong, holds off the challenge, gets to the byline, pulls it back to the Dapper, who has a really nice, opens himself up and sort of just deflects the ball in, doesn't he? Rather than put any power towards it, he just uses the pace of the ball and opens his foot up and deflects it into the far corner. And was that for 9-10 minutes into the second half? You thought again, if it wasn't the penalty that got us going, then it'll be the goal that gets us going. And it sort of did for a little bit, didn't it, Joe? There was we sort of had a couple of chances. Burns down that right-hand channel, Broadhead down that right-hand channel, when they may have potentially done better than they did with their shots. But we're always open to a bit of a counter-attack, certainly with poor old Keogh running in treacle through the centre of the pitch when Sam Smith was running after. And that's a good, brave save from Walton, actually, looking back on the replay at the feet of Smith.
Yeah, that was one though when you saw it, and obviously you're at the away end, which is so you're looking sort of down the pitch at it, and you couldn't really tell, but it looked like he'd overcome like a 5-yard head start and got there about 5 yards ahead of Keogh on the other side there, and it's like that's what I was sort of saying about Wolfenden and Edmondson there. If you want to play that game where you're going to push up, have a lot of possession, you need your centre backs to be quick and read the game well and work around from there. And you might lose a bit of the physicality that you want to have in that sort of game. But when we were behind and you wanted to push that line up high, you need pace in that line, don't you, if you're playing it so high?
So, Joe, I'm not at the game. I'm seeing the big hit points, and I see missed penalty, triple substitution, equalising goal. My brain is going, Ipswich have now got the momentum to win the game. Why was I wrong?
Well, we just didn't really create enough from there. Like Craig said, sort of both Broadhead and Burns got in really close to the goal, but Broadhead put it wide one side of the post, Burns put it wide the other side of the post, but we've sort of had a lot of play without really having a lot of chances. Just not even half shots. It wasn't like one of those games, like against Lincoln at home where you're just having chance after chance. They're getting block after block in. There just wasn't a huge amount there, and then George Hurst comes on, and sort of one of the first things he does is sort of peel off, and Keogh pings a lovely ball over the top to him, which he takes in his stride as a good first touch, and sort of doesn't make the cleanest collection, but fires it across goal, or it floats across goal, and Broadhead gets there, and you think for all the world he's just going to bundle it home, and doesn't really. It seems like the defender gets in front of him. Craig, does it? I don't know, but it seems like the defender manages to find a way in front of him, and it ends up in the keeper's hand. Brave bit of goalkeeping, brave bit of defending, and there. But once that one didn't go in, we didn't really have much of a chance after that. That felt like that was the one, really, didn't it? There,
that was pretty much it, wasn't it? That was really the last chance that we had. And when Hurst came on, we had Ladapo didn't go off. Chaplin, was it, potentially went off for him? So we had Ladapo and Hurst on the pitch at the same time, and whatever threat Ladapo had before that just completely dissipated, didn't it? He barely featured once Hurst came on up front. He dropped a little bit deeper. We weren't playing two up. We were playing Hurst up front and Ladapo a bit deeper, but it sort of completely negated his game, and the game just petered out, as it tends to do when we're chasing these games, and in the injury time board goes up, we don't have a shot. It's always the saying when you watch on telly, they say, well, there's going to be at least one more chance in this game.
Alex Ferguson says there's always a chance.
Nah, there wasn't yesterday.
Our chance is like a corner, if that makes sense. It's like the chance before the chance, if that makes sense. Like we get into a position where we might make a chance, but don't seem to have that last big chance, do we?
And Joe, is that where the because I think sometimes people are unfairly mocked for mentioning quote Plan B, but is that almost where you do need to go into Joe Royal, Paul Ward, play forward, run forward, make a chance, make the defenders defend if you're.
I don't think it is that, because I think if you think we did go longer yesterday, we did put two strikers on the pitch. We did have, like, when you see the team at the end of the game, and it's Burns on the right wing, Hurst, Ladapo, Edwards on the left wing, Cameron Humphreys sitting almost as a 10 behind them, and it's like you've got 5 attackers on there, and it's not like we weren't. It's not like we weren't trying to get forward. We just weren't really having much luck, and nothing. I don't know. We don't really seem to get the bounce of the ball. We seem to then allow them to sort of release the pressure valve by giving away a silly free kick, or someone will do a pass or a bad cross, so it goes off the goal behind, so the keeper can trot after the ball and get it. We don't. I know when we've been at our best is when you've got the sort of centre backs diving forward, intercepting the ball as soon as it comes loose, and you're just keeping that pressure. But we don't. I don't know. We didn't really have that yesterday. I don't know. We tried to maybe do something different to what we normally do, and it was not a success really.
To my eyes, we just didn't. Sorry, Ben.
Craig, I was just coming first. Our type of pressure is not making defenders defend. It's spending 10, 15 minutes chipping away and controlling, and
with the ball in play as well.
Quite. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying you were saying about Plan B, which was having more attacking players on the pitch. Well, to my eyes, we just didn't seem to know how to play with two large strikers on the pitch. We didn't seem to utilise their strengths once they were both on the pitch.
Interesting. Let me put the numbers up, guys. We're going to obviously look at what happened at Hillsborough and what happened at Derby in a minute, and then we'll get to your questions. And I suspect we'll be able to go right through the remainder with your questions. So don't pop them in yet if you are on YouTube and on the chat right now. So, interesting one. This one, obviously, the XG numbers heavily padded by the missed penalty, but 0.95 Cambridge to 0.62, which I think Dan has said in the comments up here is our lowest of the season. 14 shots to 6, but no, quote, big chances by the foot mob. Standard 73% possession, translating to a single point. Final say on this one at Cambridge, Joe?
Well, I think when you look at the stats there, probably if you take the penalty out of it, it's expected goals 0.6 versus 0.16, basically, isn't it? It's a 0-0, isn't it, there, really? And we managed to get a good goal. They got a good goal, and there wasn't really much else that happened in the game other than a missed penalty. So we're lucky to get away with a point, really. It's probably one of the first games. I don't know. I think a point was probably fair, but there's not many games where we haven't deserved to win one way or another. We might have edged it or battered them, but there's not been many where you sort of walk away thinking that just wasn't good enough, really. And that first half certainly fell into that category. It was it was just poorer performances we put in this season. The first half and the second half was good for 10-15 minutes, and then after that was just they saw the game out relatively comfortably. But then if you get a goal, it changes all that, doesn't it? If all of a sudden that Hurst ball in and Broadhead bundles at home, and we might go on and score a third goal from there, and all of a sudden you walk away thinking, oh crap, first half, we really turned it around at half time. And goals change games, they change outcomes, they change the mood and the way you look back at the game that's just happened as well.
I think the stats really do give you an idea of what the game was like. Basically, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can't read too much.
It doesn't quite add up, does it? Yeah,
no, that's right. But 75% possession, 0 big chances created. An XG of under 1 from 16 shots, whatever it was. Well, there you go. That's what it was.
David,
you could have just showed that for the first half hour, Ben.
David, thank you as ever for your support there. If you are watching live right now, you can support for your super chat. This will always be free, but you can support over there. Thank you, David. €10 on the super chat. Before we have a little look at League One, I have some pluggery to do very, very quickly if I find the right WhatsApp message here. ITFC women drew 1-1 at Watford earlier on, goal scored by Lucy O'Brien, who we sponsored. Pesky Watford sneaked an injury time equaliser, and I won't put what Richards put after that in the message. And I believe our shows this week, we're going to do a Wednesday night show, obviously the day after the Burnley game for reaction. And Thursday this week, we have had some feedback about
both live.
Our live preview show. So they will both be live. This big game, if it wasn't a must-win before, I don't know what it is now, but we've been over this over the years of the podcast against Sheffield Wednesday. Speaking of which, in League One, obviously the 2 games we're going to pick out are fairly obvious here, but I'll go through the rest of the card anyway. So Accrington 0, Lincoln 3, goal for Ted Bishop in that one. Bolton 1, Cheltenham 0. I know Derby are moving slightly quicker than Bolton, but I believe they're tied on points, having played a couple of games more. Bristol Rovers 0, MK 2. Derby 5, Morecambe 0. Derby 15 unbeaten, 6 straight victories.
And that's McGoldrick's 3rd hat-trick of the season, isn't it? After having
David McGoldrick,
never scored one in his career.
Scored a hat-trick, has 3 hat-tricks in 7 home games. Exeter 1, Charlton 2, Fleetwood 2, Burton 3, Forest Green 0.
making his debut that day for Fleetwood.
Indeed, having just signed from Burton as well. Forest Green 0, Peterborough 2. Just keep an eye on 6th place and Peterborough, maybe. We'll come back to that. Oxford 0, Shrewsbury 1, Port Vale 0, Wickham 3, Pompey 1, Barnsley 1, again in that 6th place. And the big one, the giant, first against second, although they swapped places. Sheffield Wednesday 1, Plymouth 0. So first of all, your reaction to the outcome. Obviously, we didn't make good on taking 3 points out of anybody by not winning, Craig. But your reaction on the outcome, I've now flip-flopped. I now have Sheffield Wednesday as title favourites as of today. They're going to get stress tested on Saturday, I hope. But what's your take on the outcome of the Wednesday Plymouth game?
It's very brave of you, Ben, to now predict that Sheffield Wednesday, with a game in hand and top of the league, are now your promotion favourites.
They are now my title favourites, not my promotion favourites. Important distinction, thank you. I haven't been on them all season. I've not thought it was going to go that way, I have to say, but.
No, well, I didn't. I couldn't really work out myself what our preferred result was going to be. No. You went for all 3 of them. I thought, well, yeah, possibly. But at the end of the day, it didn't really matter too much unless we did our job, which we didn't. So yeah, is what it is now, isn't it? They've got a game in hand against us. Surely we need to beat them now just to even that game in hand out, really, more than anything else. But yeah, it's. I don't think that'll affect Plymouth untowardly. I don't know. There's some chat going in about Cooper. I don't know what the situation is.
He went out injured, didn't he?
With his injury, yeah. I don't know if there's currently yet been any update or news on that. That could obviously have more of effect on them than any Whittaker loss
Massively,
would do.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's more concern of the guys that are creeping up behind us, I think.
Not creeping. They're bloody coming yelling, waving a cricket bat, Craig.
Scoring 5 goals every match, yeah. Danny Cowley actually was on the Football League show with me last night. Apart from obviously saying that we're the best team in the division again, was saying that McGoldrick shouldn't be playing in League One. I think we can probably
I have info from spending the afternoon, Mr. Cowley, that I'll give to you off air.
Oh, how exciting! But wouldn't McGoldrick be in our team, in our setup? There's one of those 2 number 10s, having McGoldrick there twisting and turning and feeding things in, having shots from range. Oh, perfect.
Joe, your take on the big head-to-head at the top and just Derby County and this streak now?
Yeah, well, my big take and sort of a more general point is, isn't it fantastic to see such a big crowd in League One? Plymouth, they sold out the away end at Ipswich. We had a sellout here. They sold out the away end at Sheffield Wednesday. And these aren't short journeys. So over 3,000 Plymouth fans going up to Sheffield.
33,000,
Sheffield Wednesday,
something.
30,000 their fans there. No, I think it is fantastic. You've got 3 clubs at Derby as well, 4 clubs at the top of the league that are selling out away ends every week, selling out home ends, really.
And best title race, Joe, in the EFL as well, isn't
it? Bringing this league home, sort of thing. And we just need to make sure we're on the right side of it. But no, that's just more general point about the health of the league on that side of it there. But no, I think Sheffield Wednesday are looking just relentless, aren't they? They never look that good to me when I watch them, but they just seem to
results are
get over the line. And I think it was noted, and they've had 8 1-0 wins this season. Well, that's a bit of variance, isn't it? But you only need that variance to go your way for a few games a season, and you'll get promoted. And like I say, they look, I wouldn't say unstoppable, but it's over a year now. I think something like 50 games. They're sort of over 2 points a game for the last 50 games they've played. And it's like, this isn't just luck. This is just that relentless keep going. And they sign players in the summer, didn't they? They went a sort of different route to us. We've signed sort of young players, maybe with higher ceilings. They've signed older players who know how to get out of this league, and Michael Smith and Michael Ahikwe, and it seems to be paying benefits for them, well, in the short term at least. And they look good. Plymouth, I say, if Michael Cooper is injured, that's going to be a massive, massive blow for them, because he's so important how they play, because they are the team that rely heavily on them. But I say Derby with Paul Warne, I think there's probably an argument that Paul Warne's probably the best manager in this division, isn't there, with regards to knowing what it needs to take to get out of this division. He might not be the best manager in the Championship or better than any of a Schumacher or McKenna or a Moore in the Championship, but certainly in League One, he knows how to get teams out of this league. And I say the way Derby are going at the moment is, I don't think they'll catch Sheffield Wednesday or Plymouth personally. I think one of Ipswich or Derby may catch them, but I think if we can catch them, Derby can't, if that makes sense, because they've been on such a good run for 20 games. They're going to lose a couple at some point. It's not going to be a 30-game unbeaten run, is it? They're going to have to dip back at some point. But no, it's definitely a 4-horse. It's a top 2 and then the next 2 at the moment, isn't it?
I believe so. And I've had a good look at all the fixtures and whatnot, and I've got March the 11th kind of circled for if Plymouth are still second with, say, a 3 or a 4 point lead. I think, looking at their last 10 games, and by the way, they play, I think, Peterborough, Barnsley, Derby, all before then. I think I would then say Plymouth will probably be able to hold out. Obviously, agree with what Craig says. If Mike Cooper's not about that, might change my mind on that. But I'm changing my mind every second week on this.
Next Saturday, if we beat Sheffield Wednesday next Saturday and Plymouth drop a point or 2, we're gonna think we're right back in it, aren't we? And Derby are going to think they're in it if they keep winning as well, aren't they? So it'd be nice to drag them back into it, wouldn't it? By winning next week.
Sheffield Wednesday Derby's the last game of the season. I just checked.
I know. I just have a feeling it won't mean anything at that point. I just have this feeling for some reason that they'll both be where they're going to be at that point, and could be even worse that one of them it means nothing for, and one of them it means something for, which very much favours the one it means something for. But hey, there is a lot of water to go under a lot of bridges before we indeed get to them. Right, let's do some questions. Get your questions in for the boys on the promotion race, on the game at Cambridge, on what you think is going wrong, on what you take, on your mood, etc., etc. I'll scroll up. I'm looking for questions that are worded like questions with question marks at the end. That's how I find them in the chat. Just a quick plug, Craig, for our excellent Telegram group, which is going from strength to strength and has been thriving this week.
Yeah, crikey. I think it was thriving from about 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon all the way through the evening and continued today on the various chats we had. It was what it was respectful all the way through. There were lots and lots of people on there with lots of differing ideas and thoughts and emotions, etc., etc. A lot about the crowd itself, actually, at the game yesterday, which was an interesting place to be in certain pockets of the stand behind the goal. But it's been absolutely fantastic place to be. I say the comments on there are pretty much always intelligent. You may not agree with them, but
I don't think yours are, Craig. I think they dropped below the
the threshold. Yeah, I'm just there to keep the average down. But yeah, they everyone's got an idea. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's respectful on there. Everyone takes each other's views into account. But say you've got people who are at the game posting during the game. You've got people watching on iFollow from abroad, watching and posting, and then everyone sort of has a bit of a catch up afterwards and a bit of a debrief. It's around match days. It really does come into its own.
And an exclusive chat with Matt Holland in there. Very handsome and powerful guy, and Matt Holland in the same chat there. But yeah, do check it out. We were getting some grief the other day. It is behind a paywall. It does cost us money to host it, so you get a 2-week trial for free, and then it's pretty inexpensive. But haters gonna hate. Hey, Joe. Let's get to some questions, shall we? I wanted to scroll up for Paul's one up here, Joe. How many players are nailed on in the starting 11 currently? And can I just conflate that with, I saw another one come in, from Michael. Is it time to pick a first 11 and run with it? I feel those two questions work well together. So go ahead, Joe.
I think you want to pick a back 4-3, whatever you want to call it, and sort of central midfielders to pick with and run with at the moment, to be fair. But when you're looking about who would you say is actually nailed on to start a game, well, I'd say Christian Walton in goal, Leif Davis at left back, and Sam Moores in midfield. Those three, maybe Wes Burns on top of those four. I don't see anyone other than those four that I'd sort of bet my house on starting the next game.
It was quite strange. So I was thinking after the last home game, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was the cup game. But thinking about the strikers, and the 10s and the striker, and it was when Broadhead slipped the ball down the side for Ladapo to score. I thought, well, it's unfair on those guys as well, getting some sort of understanding and partnerships going. Things like we talk about partnerships at the back, etc. But these guys have got to know when people are running and anticipate passes and things like that. It must be difficult for those guys to have all of a sudden two different guys behind you, or the guy up front's different to the guy it was last week. I appreciate we've got to keep everyone fresh, and we're tinkering, and the analysis tells us that we're probably better off having this person up front than that. But I don't think it helps partnerships and, let's use the word, cohesive bonds, all through. But it doesn't, does it? I don't think. I agree with the guys.
See sort of like kind of Chaplin, Wes Burns, and Janoy Donashian, when they play on that right hand side together, they clearly have a good understanding down that side. But I don't think, like I say, whether it's injuries or form, but we don't seem to be rotating that much up front, do we? It seems Ladapo tends to be starting most games. It's Connor Chaplin seems to start every game. Wes Burns will start every game. Maybe sort of Broadhead or Harness on the other side. So there's a lot less rotation than there has been this year, than there has been previously this year. But it seems to have come at a time when we think we have fallen back a little bit here.
Eric, am I right thinking Derby can't sign players if they get promotion? I assume, Eric, that will be reviewed in the close season. They are under an approved business plan. They are under a hard wage cap as well at the moment. I actually spoke to a Derby fan earlier who said he wouldn't be bothered if they missed out because, as we've discussed before, if the embargo's lifted, we all know you can spend more money if you've got it in League One than you can in the Championship with the hard limit on the losses up there. So it's an interesting one, but I'm sure they'd take promotion. I think we've kind of covered that. Neil's asking, Wolfie, Humphreys and Edwards start against Wednesday. What we'll do, Neil, we'll jump to the Burnley game and try and figure out the guys' thoughts in a minute. JG, I like that. Norwood, McGoldrick or Jerome to score the winner in the playoff final. Obviously, we could come up against Barnsley striker James Norwood, Derby striker Dave McGoldrick, or Bolton striker Cameron Jerome there.
Against Plymouth, that'll be, because we'll already be up.
Stop it. Dan, Joe, Morsey's 2-game suspension seems inevitable. Who do we want coming in for him when it happens?
Well, I think we've only seen a very, very brief snippet of him, but Massimo Luongo, when he came on against Burnley last week, did seem to give some sort of that little drive, that bite in midfield that we maybe are lacking at times when Morsey hasn't been in the team. So I'd probably say Luongo would be the obvious fit to come in for him. And he's one that you might even want to bring in for the game next weekend.
Craig, will John Gills feature again this season? I think there were some pictures shared on his Instagram of him stepping up the rehab a little bit.
With a pair of boots on, I believe.
On the grass.
Yes,
end of Feb, he should be back, apparently.
On the AstroTurf. Oh, well, that's only 3 weeks away, isn't it? Yeah, I 100% really. I've liked him as a player. I think he fits the system that we play, so I've got no issue at all with him coming. It just adds another body into the mix, doesn't it, to try and fit into that number 10. But he can also play up front, can't he, as well? So he's a little bit more, if you want a bit more mobility up there as well, he can do that. So I think he'll definitely come back in. And, from what we understand is that the club are trying to make his signing permanent, I believe, if they can as well. So there's no reason to suggest why not.
David, I'll take this one. Do you think we could drop out of the playoff picture altogether? That would be a hard no for me. Famous last words. But the way this league is, what we're doing at the moment is not good enough to keep up with teams that are battering out over 2 points per game for 20-game periods. I think it's an 11-point lead with 17 to play, is it? And essentially, we have to do relegation form probably. If we were to tack on another 8 or 9 games of bad run, you're looking at sort of relegation form for 20 games under a point per game. And I don't see that happening. And we're in disaster settings if that does.
We don't tend to lose games. Do you know what I mean? We're not losing enough
10
games.
draws now.
Yeah.
Craig, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, who I know is a Wednesday fan, actually. Will the Ipswich owners give McKenna another season if you don't go up like Chansiri did with Moore?
I'd be amazed if we didn't.
All right, elucidate on that a bit, Joe?
Well, just Mark Ashton, we know from his previous with Lee Johnson at Bristol City, he gave him a hell of a long time there. I think everything, like I say, results aren't quite going our way over the last couple of months, but everything McKenna's done at this football club has been positive, stepping us in the right direction. Ultimately, we did finish 11th last year, and if we go from 11th to 3rd or 4th, that is a big improvement. And if we do finish, I say we're still on track for 87 points this season. We're not looking at the playoffs thinking, if we can go on a decent run, we'll probably make the playoffs. We are, like you saying previously, we're basically nailed on for top 6 as a minimum already, and it's just what we can do to go from here. Yeah, if the season falls off a total cliff from here, then maybe things might change, but I don't see that happening, and I don't see past McKenna being the right man for this football club. I think he's done a hell of a lot for us on and off the pitch already, and so we want to see this journey continue.
And we were talking about signing players with high ceilings, weren't we? You've got a manager with a high ceiling as well, haven't you, at the moment? So I can't imagine there's any thought of that, to be honest.
Craig, I'm sorry, I was just going to add there. People keep talking to me and saying, "No, don't worry, Ben, you'll be all right. You'll go up for the playoffs." They don't understand Ipswich and the playoffs, do they? Michael, is JD going to see off the new fullback? He's had more comebacks than I don't know. Insert musical artist there. That's a no for me, Craig. But what are you saying?
Yeah, I think so as well. Well, again, it may well be horses for courses. If I did think actually last week that you might see Donatian against Sheffield Wednesday just by virtue of needing a more defensively minded, solid defender there. But you don't splash out £1 million on a fullback not to play him in Division 3, do you?
Joe, last one here. Unless any more questions come in, get them in now. We're going to go on to the Burnley and then Sheffield Wednesday ideas. Obviously, we don't want to steal the thunder of the preview show coming up. Do you think Hurst will do anything of note? Where are you with Hurst now, Joe? Because you've been sort of saying that it had been a long-term plan to get him, and now they've got him. It feels like I don't know, he must be seeing something that's telling him he's not quite ready yet.
Well, he hasn't played a lot, has he? That's the problem. And Freddie Ladapo is banging form, really, isn't he? So he's going to get his chances. He'll get another chance on Tuesday night against Burnley in the Cup, won't he? I'll be amazed if he doesn't start that one. And I thought he did really well against Burnley at home in the FA Cup. I thought he's really put himself about well, made some great runs, sort of gave the defenders a lot to worry about, and maybe gives us that slightly different option to Ladapo, somebody who wants to play on the shoulder as opposed to dropping in short and trying to link up play that way. So I think he'll offer us something. He hasn't, when he's come on as sub, he's sort of had half chances when he's got on, but not really got himself involved enough in the game.
Joe, I've got to put you over here, actually. Neil's asking, could you see many players leaving if we go up? Someone could probably clip out me and Joe disagreeing on Wolf. Or was that in the Telegram? And I was saying, Swansea could get Wolfenden done. And Joe was going, nah, they can't do that. Having seen Russ Martin's press conference on Thursday, Joe was very, very much right about that, and I was wrong. I
don't think Swansea can get anything done.
Anybody done. They can't get Leon Best done at the moment, bless them. Craig, could you see many players leaving if we don't go up? My experience, Craig, of Mark Ashton from Bristol City is that would be a yes, that the churn would then begin and we would see a couple of the better players go and some new players coming in, would be my take based on what I've seen prior. Obviously, he's got different FFP rules here, but what was your take?
Well, I don't know. I think you'll probably see a refresh in centre midfield. I can't imagine we're going Morsey and Evans into another year. I think we're still sort of trying to shoehorn Morsey into a role that he's not particularly comfortable with. There'll be 31 coming on 30 for Evans, I suppose, when they're another year older. Probably just another chance for McKenna to put his stamp and get his players in. The thing is, in terms of people leaving, the ones you'd probably concern yourself about leaving would be Davis, maybe Chaplin, potentially. But these guys are getting paid well, aren't they, for Championship, really? And apart from the very top of the Championship, they're getting paid Championship wages. So from that respect, you wouldn't see anyone leaving, unless it'll be Davises and your Wolfendens, the young up and coming jewel in the crown players that think you could go. I think we'll be looking to sign people like John Jules and that type of player, and it may just be a natural churn rather than losing our best players potentially.
Yeah, fair point. Joe, Rob, who's going to break their duck first, Hurst or Broadhead? It's Broadhead.
Broadhead's come a lot closer so far, hasn't he? And he looks like he's got more goals in him, and he looks like he's going to get more minutes in the team as well at the moment. So I'd say him.
Craig, Rich, have we mentioned the under-18s? Don't answer that literally.
No,
we haven't. So mention them.
No, we haven't. Next question. That was good, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that game. Well, certainly the first half, it was a fantastic match, like a game of basketball at some points. We had Liverpool on the rack for the vast majority of that first half.
Jeffrey Raksaki.
Really impressive performance. Obviously, we were invited. I couldn't mix with the
hoi polloi.
Yeah, well, no, the hoi polloi are the ones that weren't in the director's box, Joe. Unlike Dave and Rich. Did
anyone go to both editors and the director's box for the under-18s?
Rich.
Oh, I think he's in the chat. We'll let him have a riposte to that. Yeah.
Nah, don't. He gets all the good stuff, doesn't he, Rich?
He does all the bloody
admin. Does very little and takes all the glory. We don't mean it, Rich. I don't know.
Right, let's talk.
But West Ham in the quarterfinals at home for the Youth Cup as well, so into the final 8 as well. So
there's no date for that yet,
really, isn't it? No date yet, but it will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Joe, what's your team for Burnley?
Hladky in goal.
Agreed.
I think you need to mix up again. Donashian right back because Clark is cup tied. I'd get Wolfenden and Edmondson, given those two a game with each other. Centre backs, Greg Lee left back because Leif Davis isn't the most. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. He's
durable.
Durable, yeah.
Did really well, didn't he did really well in the last match he played.
Yeah, and then midfield 2, I'd go Cam Humphreys and Massimo Luongo. Give them some minutes in there, and then probably Sonny Aluko ahead of them. Kyle Edwards with a start. Caden Jackson on the right wing and George Hurst up front. I think it'd probably be something along those lines. So it's almost a 10-11 changes sort of game, but
Similar to what there was in the
team.
home game, where it was eight changes, wasn't it, for the home game? But you just got to get minutes into these guys. You know, it's now no longer the home game's been and gone. That was the one to win, wasn't it? I think now we're just a case of ticking it off and fulfilling the fixture, really.
One of the only things I would say is
Rich says he paid for his editor's ticket.
I didn't.
That's tremendous. So go ahead, Joe.
I wouldn't take the players who aren't the first. I know you've got to name 9 subs, but I wouldn't take too many of the first team players that you want to get rest into. You don't need them to travel up to Burnley probably on Monday to stay over. So you're probably going to go up there today when the podcast comes out tomorrow. For those watching on YouTube, going up there tomorrow to stay up there all day, to have it Tuesday, to travel back Tuesday night, to not be able to train on Wednesday, to then basically have Thursday one training session really to go into the Sheffield Wednesday game. So I'd be leaving the key senior players back here, and I'd be leaving maybe even like someone like Martin Pert back here to keep training going throughout the week, just because sometimes you've just got to play what's in front of you, really.
Now, before we finish up, and obviously we'll do the full live show, we'll be reflecting on the Burnley game on Wednesday, we'll do a Q&A, and then we'll talk about this another head-to-head against Sheffield Wednesday, Craig, on Thursday. Would you blame anyone looking from the outside at Ipswich playing Sheffield Wednesday for saying Sheffield Wednesday kill now? They'll be looking to come and win, given the respective confidence of the two teams.
Yeah, very possibly. They'll just carry on, as you were saying earlier. They'll just carry on doing what they're doing and look to grind out a 1-0. It'll be another sellout. They're always the noisiest fans that come to Portrush. So it'll be a hell of an atmosphere. As far as I'm aware, it's a sellout already. So yeah, let's just get as I said, we'll fulfil the fixture against Burnley and start gearing up. I haven't got any training this week to bore me to death to look for the horizon that is Sheffield Wednesday. So I'm just looking at my calendar thinking, come on then, let's go.
Joe, Sheffield Wednesday, what's your take?
Yeah, well, I think by having won last week, I think they're going to come up here and they'd probably take a point as things stand now. I think it's going to be one of those ones that they'll probably go for the game early on, and then if it gets about an hour and it's still level, they'll probably just batten up the hatches, step off and just try and take the point and go home, because a point's a fantastic result for them down here, and a point makes them much more likely to get promoted in the top 2 than the defeat does, doesn't it? Because it's taking 2 points.
It's taking the 3 points off us, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so for us, it's important because that just none of that game in hand just doesn't become a thing then, does it? You know, if we've gained that 3 points, it'll put us back where we are at the moment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Let's just finish up quickly. It's a difficult one because in terms of the mood at the moment, I totally understand people being a bit downbeat. You can play the whole long game, we're better than we were, blah, blah, blah. But in isolation this season, knowing what we know about the spend and about where we were and the rivals, it is fair enough, I think, that people are a little bit, really? You know, I thought we'd be a little further on, in terms of the points, particularly than we are now. Where are you in terms of mood, Joe?
Probably about as low as I've been this season with it. Probably about as downbeat as I have been this season. And I think we looked at what was left this year, and you're looking at the point haul, you think you're going to need to get into that top 2, and you're looking in that sort of 92, 93 range, and that needed us needing to win sort of 14 of the last 20 or whatever it was, and sort of 2 of those or 3 of those games are passed, and we've won one of them, and they're all games that we probably should have won. Oxford, well, not should have won how the games played out, but looked on paper that the games that we needed to win, maybe rather than that we should have won, is probably a better way to put it. And I say, you can't drop points at teams like Cambridge if you want to get into the top. If you want to get into the top 2 from the position we're currently in, for me, Joe, it means we're going to have to beat a Bolton or a Barnsley away as opposed to getting a point there.
Craig?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about our away form, which has fallen off a cliff. We need to get that back in order pretty quickly, because it's not far on the horizon when we've got Bolton, Barnsley, and Derby in the space of 3 weeks, all away from home. So, and
Craig, you've got to go to a side between 3rd and 6th. Hopefully, the away game will be first, because that would mean we're 3rd or 4th in a a lovely post-season 2-legger. But you've got to go away to one of those guys in a playoff game potentially as well.
Yeah, exactly. And all three have got their tails up at the moment. So yeah, I'm just a bit concerned about our away form at the moment. That's what we've got. 2 games with Bristol, week 10 days time, and Milton Keynes obviously after that. So we've got opportunity to do it, but that was what we weren't. That wasn't ever a problem at the beginning of the season. That was our bread and butter, 3 points and performances to go with it.
There we go. Right, guys, thank you for spending the hour with us here on Sunday night. Hopefully, some positivity will come out of this week, but I think we'll know that the only way for us to be really, really buzzing this time next week would be via a victory over the new League One league leaders, Sheffield Wednesday. Last word from you, Joe?
It's getting better. It's got to get better.
Got to believe it's getting better. Last word from you, Craig?
I've got nothing pithy to say, really. I'm still a bit down after yesterday, but as you say, crikey, can you imagine? Let's just imagine we win next weekend. What's it going to be like then?
I don't like imagining nice things. It never ends up well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live in the chat. If you've joined us after the fact on Acast or iTunes listening, thank you very much. If you're here right now on YouTube or watching after the fact, please do hit the thumbs up button. Really helps us out. And if you haven't already subscribed, have a think about joining us over on Telegram and follow us on our socials, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. A better week ahead. Less talk of stumbling, hobbling, slipping, sliding. Slip, sliding away. It's been the Blue Monday podcast.